Thank you, Alice. When we are faced with conflicts and divisions, such as in Ukraine at this moment, we have to think and pray for peace and think of unity of life. In Indian tradition, the right hand represents, or right palm represents the world. The left palm represents the self. So by bringing those two together, we bring the world and the self together. So let's bring those two palms together as I read this meditation. Let's bow to sacred life, sacred soil, sacred earth, sacred universe. We see all beings in us and ourselves in all beings. We see whole universe in ourselves and ourselves in the whole universe. Each one of us are a microcosm of macrocosm. Cosmos is our country. The planet Earth is our common home. Nature is our nationality, and love is our religion. All living beings are sustained by the same breath of life. Thus, we are all connected. We are all related. We are interbeings. We all share a single origin. Unity and diversity dance together. All our thriving is mutual. When separation and divisions end, suffering ceases. We go beyond right and wrong, beyond good and bad. We bow to the unity of life. We bow to the diversity of forms. We bow to the sacred, to life, to the earth, to the universe. Breathe in, breathe out, smile, relax, let go. Let go of all expectations, attachments, and anxieties. Let go of all worries, fears, and anger. Let go of ego. Let's move from ego to eco. Breathe in, breathe out, smile, relax, let go. We are at home. We are at home. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satish. So I'm delighted to be hosting you. You are a lifelong activist and a former monk. You've inspiring global change for over 50 years. And tonight we are going to try and talk about 3 of your many books: Pilgrimage for Peace, get this right, Soul, Soil and Society, A New Trinity for Our Time, and Elegant Simplicity, The Art of Living Well. Before we dive into your fantastic books and the wonderful ideas that we find in them, I just want to make sure that everyone on the call knows about your amazing biography. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about the beginning of your life. So you were born in Rajasthan in India in 1936, and at the age of 9, after the sudden death of your father, you left your family home to become a Jain monk. And then at the age of 18, you left the ashram, inspired by the writings of Mahatma Gandhi, to kind of re-engage in the world. Could you just briefly tell us about these early formative years in your life?
Well, thank you, Alice. As you said, The death of my father was a very big event in my childhood. When I saw my mother crying, my sisters crying, everybody very sad, and my father not moving, not talking, not going for a walk, I could not understand what was happening. So when I asked my mother, why are you crying? And why father is not talking and moving? She said, your father is dead. What is death? We all die. Mother, will you die? Yes, my son, I will die. Will I die, mother? Yes, my son, you also will die. That was so shocking. At age 4, 5, I was so young and I could not believe what it means. So that led me to a search in life. Can one live without death? And that's what really took me to become a monk. It's a long story. I have written another book, which is more autobiographical. It is an autobiography called No Destination. So I became a monk in search of life without death. But then I realized that death is not just only one event which we have to fear at the end of this period of what we call life, but death is happening all the time. And when body goes, that's a kind of one big bang, but death is happening all the time. And death is not the end of the world. It's a recycling of life, returning of life. Life continues. And so I thought that instead of searching for life without death, I have to search for life with life. And therefore, I wanted to come back in the world from a monkhood and work as a spiritual person. Spirituality, nonviolence, detachment, compassion, kindness, generosity. These things are not only for the monks, they are for everybody. So this is why I came back from the monastic order to live in the world and be an activist and work for peace and for, and you will see in my books, and work for environment and for social justice and for all these things.
And so you came, as you say, back into the world, and then about 8 years later, at the age of 26, you went on, hence the name of your book, Pilgrimage for Peace, the long walk from India to Washington. Essentially, you wanted to go to the nuclear capitals of the world, so from New Delhi to Moscow, to Paris, to London, and to Washington, DC. You walked 8,000 miles for 800 days. Can you just tell us a little bit about the inception of that walk?
Okay. You know, I was inspired by Bertrand Russell, the great British philosopher and a scientist even, but more philosopher. At age 90, he was protesting against the nuclear bombs. And that was the height of Cold War. The Soviet Union and the United States were really sort of against each other, building military and particularly nuclear bombs. So when Bertrand Russell protested and he was arrested and put in jail, I was 26-year-old young man sitting in India, and I was in a coffee house when I heard this news, or I read this news. I was with a friend. I said to him, look, here's a man of 90 going to jail for peace in the world. What are we doing, young men? Sitting here drinking coffee. Let's do something. If a 90-year-old man is working for peace, what are we doing? Let's do something. And so we decided then and there, after long discussion, that let's go to these 4 nuclear capitals of the world: Moscow, Paris, London, and Washington. And let's go on foot. Because when we walk, that is a kind of putting our body on the line, so to speak. We are step by step, every step for peace. And we are talking to people at the grassroots level. So we decided to walk, and we decided to walk without any money. Because when you are walking for peace, you have to show that you trust the humanity. wars come from fear,
Mm.
and peace comes from trust.
Mm.
And so we decided to trust the universe, trust the people. We went through Muslim countries, Christian countries, communist countries, capitalist countries, rich countries, poor countries, mountains, deserts, snow, whatever happened, we walked. We walked without any money.
Yeah.
And for 2.5 years, we didn't touch any money. And still, hospitality and generosity of the strangers was so good. We could trust the humanity, and we could really embrace everybody, all kinds of nationalities, religions, political systems, whatever it was. We went beyond right and wrong, and we trusted everybody, and we managed to be in the Kremlin. We managed to be in the White House. We were received by Bertrand Russell. We met Martin Luther King. We had a wonderful time for 2.5 years.
And okay, so you draw many kind of philosophical and practical lessons from this long walk. And one of the main conclusions, Satish, that would come to very much shape your career and your work is that, and I'm quoting you here, by walking across the continents and experiencing the workings of modern civilization, I came to the conclusion that humanity is at war with nature. In other words, we've separated man and nature so that there exists this kind of idea of nature out there, and we humans are here. And so you go on to write, therefore I became not only a peace activist, but an eco-activist, not only a peace pilgrim, but an earth pilgrim. You were activating for inner peace, world peace, and green peace. Can you talk about how this walk transformed your relationship to the earth and how it led you onto this new path of, as you say, environmental activism?
That's a very good question, Alice. Because when I started walking, I was walking for world peace, nuclear disarmament, and peace with people.
Right, and it evolved. It evolved.
It evolved. But when I experienced nature, and when I experienced the mountains, the deserts, the forests, the animals, and the humans, then the idea that humans and nature are separate came to an end. And I thought that nature and humans are made of the same elements. The forest and the animals and the mountains are made of earth, air, fire, water. I am made of earth, air, fire, water. The word human comes from humus. In Latin, humus word means soil. So human beings are literally soil beings. So when I saw in Europe and in America, the factory farms, the kind of animals in cruel conditions, and the exploitation of forests, and destruction of forests, and the pollution of rivers, and pollution of oceans, I thought we have to make peace with nature. We are at war against nature. We are at war with nature. We are at war with animals and the oceans and the forest. And we treat nature as if it was below us. We treat nature only as a resource for the economy. As a nature is a source of life itself. We are nature. Nature and humans are not separate. So that conviction came to me as I was walking and experiencing nature, deep experience of nature. Deep experience of forests and mountains made me to make a deep commitment to make peace with nature as much as peace with humans, because humans and nature are not separate. And so that is what connected me with the environmental movement. And I came across with the organizations like Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth and WWF and many, many other organizations. And eventually that made me to bring this soil soul society, as I have written, making peace with humans and people, but making peace with nature, soil, and making peace with yourself, soul. And so making peace with yourself and loving yourself is also part of making peace in the world. So peace is a kind of indivisible. You cannot separate the peace in political sense, but not peace in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, in your spirit, and a peace with the people. But we can exploit nature, and you can destroy nature. You can pollute. You can waste. You can do what we want. Contaminate. That cannot be a peace. So if humanity wants to live happily, joyfully, elegantly, we have to live in peace and with nature. That is a very fundamental conviction that I have. This is why I call myself peace pilgrim as well as an earth pilgrim.
I think it goes to this idea in the meditation that you said at the beginning about the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm. It also, as you mentioned, touches on this trinity that you conceived of, this new trinity for our time: soil, soul, and society. And the order of these three pieces of the triangle are important, because you write that the emphasis on the soil, the earth, is first because it represents nature and sustains the entire earth system. Everything comes from the soil and returns to the soil. So again, going back to this idea of life and death. Can you talk a little bit more about this new trinity for our time?
Yes, yeah. You know, you are in France, and the French had a trinity of égalité, liberté, fraternité.
Right.
And the Christians have trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But when I say to my French friends that égalité, liberté, fraternité does not include anything about nature, and nothing about the soul and the spirit and the psyche, our inner peace. And also Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Father, but about the mother, and the Son, but what about the daughter and the woman, feminine, and the Holy Spirit, but about the holy matter. Everything is sacred. And so I wanted to create a new trinity for our time, for age of ecology, for the age of environment, the age of more holistic thinking, where everything is interconnected, everything is interrelated. We are all interdependent. So what can that be? So first and foremost, we have to realize that we are made of nature. We are nature. We are made of soil. And if we do not respect soil and the regenerative nature of the soil is kind of amazing, miraculous, that you put one seed in the ground, it will turn into a tree. The soil transforms itself into a tree. The trunk and the branches, the leaves, the blossom, the fruit, all soil transformed. And that becomes fragrant fruit and juicy fruit. And we have a nourishing and nutritious food. And we have clothes. Our soil is transformed to clothes, and soil is transformed to wood. And we have beautiful houses. Everything we have is soil. And we don't care about the soil. We don't talk about the soil. We are polluting the soil. We are poisoning the soil. And the soil is being depleted. Soil is being eroded. Soil is running away into the water and the sea. And we think the soil is dead, lifeless. So we put poisonous chemicals, fertilizers, pesticide, herbicide. And so that is not good. So this is why I put soil first, so that people can love nature. When you love nature, love soil, love mountains, love forests, love flowers, love rivers, love oceans, love insects, you will be full of love. And when you're full of love, there will be peace in the world all over. This is why I put soil first. But I don't forget that we also have to love ourselves. That's a very difficult, because many people can talk about loving others, but how can you love others if you don't love yourself? You have to take care of yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to respect yourself, and you have to find your potential, and you have to discover who you are. The self-realization can happen only through loving yourself. And so I put soul in the middle, so that we appreciate the soul qualities of compassion, of kindness, of generosity, of love, of relationship, of truth, of all these beautiful ideals and values we have. We have to cultivate them. They don't just come to us without cultivating. Like you have to learn poetry, you have to learn literature, you have to learn languages, and you have to learn singing. The same way, you have to learn how to be kind and compassionate and loving and generous and hospitable, all those soul qualities. We have to cultivate those. And then I come to society, because we have to, like I said in my meditation, we have to go beyond these divisions of Americans and Russians and Chinese and Indians and Africans and Europeans and so on, or Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Baha'is, Jewish, Buddhists, whatever. These are okay. These are diversity of forms, and we have to celebrate diversity. It's wonderful to have many languages, many cultures, many nationalities, many colors. We should celebrate and not turn them into divisions and conflicts. This is why I put these three soil, soul, society, these three together. And in more detail, I've explained in the book, but in nutshell, this is the purpose I created this new trinity.
It's fantastic. And it offers one answer to the question, how do we reconcile this idea of inner nature and outer nature, which, as you say, is one indivisible whole. Another answer, it seems to me, Satish, and this kind of gets into the more philosophical aspects of your work, which I really enjoyed, so one answer comes from this idea of karma yoga from the Bhagavad Gita, which is an excerpt from the Mahabharata, which is an Indian epic. The idea of karma yoga is that the gap between the outer and the inner world precisely is bridged, that the inner landscape of love and the outer landscape of nature are one. And you talk about this idea of action, so whether it's cooking, gardening, writing a book, building a house, making furniture, this idea of action is natural to all humans. We are all made to act, our body is made to act, but there are two types of actions, and you lay these out. On the first hand, we have the action of pure intentions. This is the action that has no desire for the fruit of its labor. And so if we act in this way, we will not have harmful consequences and will be liberated from the self-importance and from the ego. And by contrast, you describe this idea of action without yoga, which is like sticky glue. And this glue is the desire for an attachment to achievement. Can you talk a little bit about this idea of karma yoga, and how do we start to, as you say,
yes, I mean, this is a very,
how do we start to decondition ourselves, because society does not help us, does not encourage us to act selflessly or without desire for fruits of labor.
That's right. That's right. Our society, I mean, this is a very wonderful contribution and a gift, I would say, from the East, gift from India to the world, that you act without desiring the success or the failure. You treat success and failure with equanimity. And you act because action itself is its own reward. Action itself has its intrinsic value. For example, I'm talking to you now. This is my pleasure. I'm talking to you now and to the audience with my love, but I have no other desire. I have no expectation. I have no wish to succeed in anything. I don't want to convert you to my ideas. I don't want you to be my followers. I don't want you to do anything. I have no desire. I speak to you and to the audience here with love, but without any attachment of result. And this is a very difficult concept for the Western people to understand, because they are all the time looking for result. The action has no value unless it has a result. For me, just the opposite. Result has of no consequence to me. What I'm doing should be good, should be right, should be beautiful, should be enjoyable, should be pleasurable, should be helpful now, in this moment. What happens later doesn't matter. If I act now in a beautiful way, beauty is very important in karma yoga. Karma yoga is a yoga of beauty. That whatever you make should be beautiful. I've said in my book, beautiful, useful, durable. Bud principle, B-U-D principle. So if you are focusing on the action and making it as perfect, as beautiful, as clear, as helpful as possible, and this moment when you are acting, that is it. You are not living in the future. Future has not come. We don't know what the consequence of your action will be. But if you make your action as good and perfect as a yogi, karma yoga, then naturally action will have good results, naturally. But you don't have to work on it. You don't have to think about it. You do it because doing itself has its own intrinsic value. And that has helped me tremendously. So I walked around the world for 8,000 miles for 2.5 years. I suffered, I was hungry, I had blisters, I was in the snow, I was cold, and yet I enjoyed it because the action itself was a source of great pleasure and joy. So if we can bring ourselves to free ourselves from ego, and I want to achieve, I want to succeed, my name, my fame, my prestige, my status, my awards, my salary, my money, me. In karma yoga, you free yourself from this me culture to we culture. We are all together and we thrive mutually together and we act for each other and help each other and support each other. So this mutuality, reciprocity, togetherness is more important than my success, my money, my job, my salary, my this, my that, all that. So that's a karma yoga. I think if you are really interested, Alice, Bhagavad Gita is the best text of this explanation. And the Arjuna and Krishna are in dialogue about this whole thing, that how you can act with equanimity. Gain, loss, pain, pleasure, cold, heat, hunger, thirst, anything, you accept everything. Life is not one. Life has variety of things, and you accept ups and downs. When you are walking on a pilgrimage on a coast path, you go up, you go down. You are mounting in the mountains, hiking, you go up and down. And life is like that. Your body sometimes ill, sometimes healthy, sometimes headache, sometimes cold, sometimes very good. All that is part of the design of the universe. You must not want only everything good and everything perfect, everything comfortable, no problems, no difficulties. That kind of thinking is delusion, illusion. That's what Bhagavad Gita has taught me, and I practice it, and I find it very useful.
I'm so glad, Satish, that you bring up this idea again of pilgrimage, because and also kind of the fact that you're continuing to meditate on the Bhagavad Gita, because it seems to me that modern life, and you write this in your book, is not at all set up to encourage people to act in selfless and non-individualistic ways. And you have been living in the West, you've been living in the UK for 40 years, and maybe Devon is a kind of karmic yoga enclave. But how do you resist the tensions, resist the kind of seduction of Western society that is trying to encourage you to become more individualistic, to become more attached to your outcomes?
I mean, I can resist the temptation by meditation and by keeping myself aware of the trap of this desires and attachments and ego, because they don't lead you anywhere, because you are not contented. However much you have is never enough. If you are a millionaire, you want to be a billionaire. If you are a billionaire, you want to be a trillionaire. There's no end. So contentment is the key. So I practice contentment. The Western idea of economic growth, however much you grow, is never enough. You can be a richest country in the world, like America, Japan, Canada, US, UK, EU. All these countries are very rich, and yet they are not contented. They are not happy. They are not satisfied. So contentment to live in the present moment and do your best and enjoy what you are doing and love what you are doing and celebrate your life every moment. Present moment is the best moment. If you live like that with a contentment, you are happy and everything is there. Life is abundant. Love is abundant. Generosity is abundant. Nature is abundant. There is abundance of life, which I enjoy. I lack nothing. I don't need palaces. I don't need yachts. I don't need private jets. I don't need them. They are a burden to me. I'm very happy to live simple, elegant, comfortable, good life. And I want everybody to have a good life. Nobody should be poor. Nobody should be hungry. Nobody should be without home. Why we have somebody with yachts and planes and jets and palaces, and other people not even a hut or not even a one meal, a proper meal. And so this kind of disparity comes because we have this greed and a kind of accumulation of wealth and desire for more and more and more. So karma yoga is to live every moment of your life as fully, as wholesomely, as imaginatively, as creatively, as poetically, as artistically as possible. That is where karma yoga is. Karma yoga is a way of living artistically and poetically and imaginatively, rather than greedily and for money and power and a prestige and a position and a status.
Before we move on to Schumacher College and the small school, because I want to talk about the role of education in this, I just want to draw out three more tensions, it seems to me, between the life that you're kind of advocating for and the seduction of modern life. And so you talk about, you kind of meditate on the lessons of pilgrimage, and you say that in pilgrimage, very little is planned, one has to be flexible, When difficulties arise, we welcome them. When we face problems, we accept them. And again, by contrast, you say modern life is very planned, very organized. We pre-book our hotels, our guides, our taxis, and there's no use for imagination or ingenuity. Another tension I would love for you to speak to is that you write, in modern life, we are comfort seekers. We want everything to be made easy and convenient. And again, by contrast, on pilgrimage, the path of the pilgrim is not easy or straightforward. It involves struggle. You talk about tapas, which is this idea of heat, and through heat, there's transformation and change. And it's important to face difficulty and encounter problems. And then the final kind of tension, I think, between modern life and pilgrimage life is, in modern life, we're taught to be judged and kind of we're held to standards of success. We're taught to be extraordinary. And you say, on pilgrimage, to be ordinary is the most extraordinary thing we can do in our lives. Can you speak a little bit more to these final kind of tensions that I've just outlined?
Let's go one by one.
Okay.
Can you start just one sentence, the first one?
So the first one is, on pilgrimage, very little is planned, fixed, or predicted. And in modern life, everything is planned, fixed, and predicted.
Yes, yeah. This is the difference between being a pilgrim and being a tourist. Pilgrim is more spontaneous, more improvised, more kind of present moment. You don't anticipate and plan your destination. You don't have a destination. Pilgrim is, every step is a pilgrimage. So when you are planning everything and expecting things to happen, things don't work out as you expect. And therefore you are disappointed. So tourists are generally disappointed, but the pilgrims are not disappointed because they don't expect anything. They accept life as it comes and formulate it and improvise it and make it as beautiful, as great as possible in that moment. And so this is what I experienced in my pilgrimage. I felt that there's a difference between being a tourist and being a pilgrim. A tourist expects, and pilgrim accepts. That's the difference. Expectation and acceptance. And pilgrimage accepts, but not passively. Accepts, but then participates in the process of walking, communicating, interacting, working together. And through that participation in that present moment, a pilgrim transforms life and transforms the life of others whom he or she encounters. So acceptance is not passive, but it's very creative and very courageous. You have to be courage. And that's what comes to the second point, that tourist wants everything comfortable, no problem. Hotels, cars, taxis, museums, restaurants, everything should be all organized and there should be no difficulty and no problem. The pilgrim accepts the difficulties and actually welcomes the difficulties because life is made of difficulties. And when in the nature, you can say there are storms and there are hurricanes, there are volcanoes, there are many hardships in nature. In the same way, life is full of hardships. So we should welcome hardship. That makes us resilient, that makes us strong, that makes us courageous. And therefore, I don't seek kind of convenience. Comfort is different. Comfortable is a state of mind, but everything should be convenient and organized and easy and no difficulty, no problem. That mindset is not imaginative, not creative, not courageous. We lack courage. At this moment, our society is becoming more and more timid because everything is on the press of the button. Everything should be done. You don't need to worry about anything. You don't have to face any problem or challenge in your life.
So how do we, Satish, how do you advise people to foster and be braver in a life that is set up to be comfortable and cushy?
I would say, maybe your listeners may not like it, but I would say seek difficulties. Make your work a bit more. When I wanted to go to Moscow, Paris, London, Washington, easily I could have flown. No problem. I could have gone in the first class. I could have gone to Moscow, stay in a hotel and easily. But I just said, no, I don't want to go by aeroplane in a first class and go and stay in a hotel Moscow. I want to walk. Even walking is easy. I said, I want to walk, but I want to walk without money. Even without money is easy. But I said, I want to walk without money, but I will be vegetarian. And it'd be very difficult in 1960s to find vegetarian food in the mountains of Afghanistan and deserts of Iran and the villages of Russia. So I made it difficult on purpose to make myself strong and face the life in such a way that I can take adventure. I mean, when somebody goes to Mount Kailash or Mount Everest, they don't seek easily go on a kind of helicopter and look at the Mount Everest. They walk and they climb, and there are difficulties. There's a snow, there's a hardship, there's weight on their back. So anything, if you want to learn a sport, you can't do it easily. You have to work for football or cricket or any kind of swimming, any kind of sport you want to learn. It is difficult. If you want to learn violin, it's difficult. Every day you have to practice, morning, evening, practice, practice, practice. So that is what I want to say to people, that you may not like this idea, but be courageous and seek difficulties. Face difficulties and embrace difficulties, and that will make you stronger and courageous, and you will be better off for it. In the beginning, you might fear, oh, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be difficulties. I want everything done for me, and everything should be good for me. But I said that will not make you strong. That will make you not make you creative. All the great poets and great Van Gogh. Now you can buy his painting for $40 million, but he died poor. But he painted and painted and painted with great difficulty. So all great writers, poets, saints, they have all gone through difficulties, and that has made them shine. That's a tapas. That's the Indian idea of going through the heat and the fire of life. And that makes you strong and resilient, and you will feel much better afterwards.
Satish, thank you. I want to turn to another solution because I'm looking at the time and I have so many more questions, but I really want to talk about the educational piece of this, because that's really what you've been working on for so much of your life since you came to the West, since you came to Devon. So in your view, one way to answer the question of how do we start to decondition ourselves, how do we create a society of karma yogis, you write, in my view, we have to begin at the beginning, which is to say with childhood and schools, education and learning. Can you talk about the inception of the small school and also Schumacher College in Devon, which is the International Center for Ecological Studies? You're the founder, you're the director of programs. Please tell us about the idea of the education of the hand and the heart.
Yes. You know, when you go to university in Paris, maybe Sorbonne, in Britain, maybe Oxford or Cambridge, or in America, maybe Harvard, Yale, big universities. When you go to university, the teacher look at you, they think that you have no body at all. You have no hands, no hearts, no body, no legs, only head, and even half head, because we have two sides of brain. The left brain is reasoning, science, calculation, practicalities. The right hemisphere of the brain is more intuition, imagination, creativity, poetry, spirituality, heart, compassion. Universities don't teach the right hemisphere of the brain. They don't teach how to use your hands. They don't teach how to feel your heart feelings. They don't teach you how to walk around the world or even around Britain or around France. They only train your left brain. And they think that's all you are. We spend millions and millions and millions of euros and pounds and dollars on just training the half brain. So I started Schumacher College to change this. I said the half brain training education is out of date. That was maybe okay in the 19th and 20th century. But in 21st century, in the age of ecology, in the age of holistic thinking, we need to educate whole body, education of head, education of heart, education of hands. So at Schumacher College, all students have to work in the garden. Before they have a class, intellectual class, philosophy or economics or ecological design or whatever it is. Before that, the 1 hour in the garden. Every student has to cook in the kitchen. There's a kitchen where students and teachers cook together. and make a wholesome vegetarian, healthy food. And they share together, breakfast, lunch, dinner together. Then it makes a community. And then, of course, we have intellectual education as well. But education of head, heart, and hands, that is very essential. And I would like to see every school having a garden, every child learning to touch the soil, learning to plant the seeds, learning to see how seeds grow, and how a seed can become an apple tree, how a seed can become tomatoes, how one seed can produce 100 tomatoes, how each tomato has 100 seeds again. That miracle of nature, you cannot learn by reading a book or even watching television films or show. You have to experience nature. And in our schools, all universities should be associated with farms. All universities should be associated with forests and planting trees, and students should go out in nature. At Schumacher College, we say, humans teachers are fine. I'm your teacher, human teacher, but nature is our teacher. Nature is our mentor. We have to learn from nature. We have to learn from the mountains, and we have to learn from the trees, and learn from the birds, and learn from the animals. When we can learn from nature, and we can learn with nature, we can learn about nature, we can be nature, then our education will be whole brain, left hemisphere and right hemisphere. And we will be education of heart and a feeling and compassion and relationship and courage. Courage is missing in our education. Imagination is missing in our education. Everything is just laid for you. Everything is designed for you. You don't have to think. You don't have to imagine. You don't have to create. Everything, all knowledge is compartmentalized and packaged and given to you. I want people to discover for themselves. And so education should be a journey, a pilgrimage of discovery, self-discovery and discovery of the world. And so that's why I started small school, and I'm particularly, your listeners are adult listeners. You can come to Schumacher College for 1 week or 2 weeks and experience for yourself. But also we have 6-month-long courses, 1-year-long courses, and we have courses in many sort of postgraduate degree courses. So we have everything what a university can offer. And our courses are accredited by a University of Plymouth. And so they are all fully fledged accredited courses, but they are holistic. They are head, heart, and hands. They are nature-centered, not money-centered, not job-centered, not ego-centered, but eco-centered, nature-centered, earth-centered, human-centered, value-centered. And that's the kind of big difference between education, what we have at Schumacher College, and the education in the world at large.
Satish, I have one more question for you, and then I urge people on the call to post questions that I can pose to you on their behalf. My final question is that I can't remember which book. It's now kind of the ideologies are swirling together in my mind, but you described that when early on at the ashram, you learned about the 4 stages of life. And so according to the Hindu tradition, so the first 25 years is a period of learning. The second 25 years is practicing skills and ideas that you've acquired. For the third 25 years, you're committing yourself to the service of your community. And you, Satish, now that you're in your mid-80s, you're in the 4th period of your life, which is living your inner truth through meditation, reflecting, and also kind of withdrawing from the world and letting go of all the attachments to material and emotional possessions. And yet you seem to me as engaged and as passionate as ever. Do you feel the urge to kind of retreat and begin to meditate on all that you've done? Or do you feel that you really still very much need to be in the world, since the world is very much in trouble?
And in a way, psychologically and spiritually, mentally, I am in the 4th stage of life. And I am doing a lot of reading, a lot of walking, a lot of gardening, a lot of living, which is without any great responsibilities. I don't take any administrative, managerial, financial responsibilities of Schumacher College or anything else. I teach, but teaching is, you can be in 4th stage of life and still teach. So, but it is not for some gain or some kind of something that one can do when you are in the 2nd stage of life. So in a way, I am living my 4th stage of life with more contemplative, more meditative, more reading, and a bit of writing. I'm working on a new book called Radical Love. which will be published by the end of this year or early next year.
Mm.
And so writing is a kind of contemplation, a kind of meditation. So meditative and contemplative life is mainly I'm living now. And my activism is it's a more a kind of spiritual activism rather than now I'm not undertaking such a big walk. I would like to go to Moscow if I was a young man and urge the authorities there to stop this nonsense of fighting and find a common ground in Ukraine. But I'm not going, but I'm now 85. I think some young people should go there. But I would like to, of course, see the world a little bit more behaving in a wise and a sane way and not engage in all these fights and wars and killing and refugees and suffering of ordinary people. So that activism now has come to a kind of close, and I'm more through prayer, the power of positive thinking, a power of prayer that I'm using to spread my spirit and a positive thinking towards Ukraine, towards Russia, towards environmental sustainability, towards ecological balance. All those things are more, I'm using my positive thinking and prayer and meditation more than real activism.
Satish, a final question. When you think about the people in the first stage of their life, so 25 and under, do you feel hopeful for the future of humanity?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I do feel very hopeful because people like Greta Thunberg and many hundreds of thousands of young boys and girls around the world marching Fridays for the future, and they are saying that we have to create a new world which is sustainable, which is regenerative, which is good for humanity and good for nature. We should not destroy and pollute and waste and contaminate our environment. These young people raising this voice, that gives me great hope, and I think we have a good future. Our next generation is not going to be same as the previous generation. Next generation is going to be much more. I mean, we have at Schumacher College a course on food and farming, and 20 young people have joined to learn about growing food and farming and agriculture. That's wonderful. And they want to do hands-on, not sitting on a tractor or sitting on a combine harvester or having computers to run your farm. They want to do hands-on farming. And that's a good sign. So young people give me great hope.
Satish, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure and such a delight talking to you. We have a few questions in the chat I want to get to. We have a question, and if you haven't posted your question for Satish Kumar, if you arrived late, you have stumbled into Evenings with an Author with Satish, who is the author of many books, including the ones that we're talking about tonight: Pilgrimage for Peace, The Long Walk from India to Washington, Soil, Soul and Society, and Elegant Simplicity. So we have a question from Laura, who asks, how do we engage with fear and difficulty and emerge resilient rather than just damaged?
Okay, so the antidote to fear is trust. And so you have to say that I'm going to experiment in my life. I will trust. This weekend, I'm going to go away and not lock my door, even though my insurance people and security people are going to complain, but I'm going to take risk. Or I'm going to go without any money and walk for 10 days, or I will do something and see how people respond. Something, whatever comes to your mind. These are just a kind of example which comes to my mind. But everybody, you have to think for yourself how you can cultivate trust and focus on it. Say, do I trust the world? Do I trust myself? Do I trust my fellow human beings? Do I trust my colleagues? Do I trust everybody? And even if I get cheated once in a while, I will live with that being cheated rather than all the time be afraid and be doubtful and be afraid all the time and be insecure all the time. So I'm prepared to be cheated. I'm prepared to be let down, but I will trust. If you can cultivate that and you can make a resolution for that in your heart and you think every day about it, say, today I'm going to try trusting and see what happens. I'm not going to doubt anybody. I'm not going to fear anybody. I'm not going to suspect anybody. I'm just going to let everybody do what they want to do and see why they are doing it and look at it positively. And maybe there's some good reason what they are doing. I don't have to be in judgmental mood. I don't have to say they are right or wrong. I have to just observe. That kind of practice every day, like you learn to play violin or you learn to paint a picture, you learn to trust. That's a kind of skill to learn. Try every day, step by step, a bit by bit, you will become stronger and you will start to find that trusting was all right. And even even if I got cheated once in a while, but that's very rare. And mostly 99.9% of the time, people are very good and they are very helpful and they are very kind. If that way you learn to trust. So the antidote to fear is trust.
We have a Laura says, thank you, Satish. We have a comment from Vanda, and it comes to, it kind of touches on a question that I had. So Vanda says, Satish, your enthusiasm and confidence and in and for the future is very inspiring. And this goes to a question about the importance of idealism that I wanted you to speak about. So in your book, Elegant Simplicity, you write, you might call me an idealist. Yes, I am an idealist or an enthusiast or as you wish, but I ask you, what have the realists achieved? Wars, poverty, climate change, the climate crisis. The realists have ruled the world for far too long and have failed to achieve peace and prosperity for all. So let us give the idealists a chance.
Yes, the answer is there, because the thing is that people think that you have to be realistic, you have to be pragmatic, you have to do this, you have to be that, and so on. That's all very well. But without idealism, without a higher level of consciousness and awareness, where we can trust and we can respect and we can appreciate and we can celebrate. The idea of celebration is the most important in idealism. Idealist celebrates life. Idealist celebrates diversity. Idealist celebrates what is, whereas the realist says, what is not good enough, I can make it better. What is nature is not good enough, I can make it better. Always you want to do is interfere. That's the kind of realist always want to change. You want to make something. But the idealist accepts the nature, the universe, the stars, the sun, the moon, the oceans, the flowers, the humans, the children. Everybody have their own intrinsic value and we have to celebrate. So if you want to be an idealist, then you have to celebrate life. It is all diversity and in all different forms and ups and downs. And then you will say life is rich and therefore let us celebrate. That's the difference between idealist and a realist. And I rather be an idealist than a realist.
And Satish, do you have any advice for how to remain positive and in a celebratory mood, given that the news of the climate crisis is so perturbing and shocking and devastating? How does one celebrate nature, knowing that nature is really being destroyed at a rate that we can hardly conceive of?
Yeah. No, I think you are absolutely right. It gives me tremendous pain to see nature being destroyed, oceans being polluted, environment being sort of spoiled, carbon emission in the atmosphere, the greenhouse gases, all these things. Sometimes I cry and it gives me pain. But at the same time, nature is still beautiful. The magnolias on the tree now in the spring, and the buttercups and the kind of primroses and the daffodils and the snowdrops and all the flowers and the butterflies in the hundreds of different colors and shapes and forms and even earthworms, which I enjoy is watching in the garden, although they may not look to you beautiful, but for me even earthworms are so wonderful that they work day and night under the soil to keep the soil in good condition. So of course we have to be aware of what humanity has done to nature and how can we change that. And this is why I have been an environmental activist. And we must do everything to reduce that pollution and waste and simplify our lives. This is my Elegant Simplicity book tells you that you have to simplify your life, live a good life, elegant life, happy and joyful life, but not wasteful, not polluting, not extravagant, not too more than you need. So if we can work on that, but at the same time, large part of humanity is also very good teachers, good mothers, good fathers, good farmers all over the world, good gardeners, good painters, good musicians, good poets, good writers. So we can't just focus only on negative, only on climate change and global warming, which is dreadful and dangerous and very upsetting. But we have to have a perspective and say, still, the world is beautiful, nature is beautiful, humanity is beautiful, people are loving, mothers are looking after children, and fathers are feeding their children, and teachers are teaching their children, doctors and nurses are looking after the sick and the healing them. So although farmers are growing food, craftsmen are making pots and furniture and so on. So there is a lot of good in the world. We mustn't overlook that, but we have to keep that balance. And of course, we should do everything we can to stop the pollution, the waste, the climate change, and all the things we do badly. We must do everything to reduce that and stop that. But we mustn't lose hope, and we mustn't lose heart, and we must celebrate at the same time.
This gets to the point to a question that Marie asks. This is a kind of idea about how to balance different causes and different events that are happening in the world all at the same time. So Marie says, what a kind, bright person beaming with joy you are, Satish. Such an honor to have this session. Her question is, to what extent are we focusing too much on the current conflict in Ukraine? Meaning, are we ignoring other suffering that needs also pressing attention and action?
Yes, because the thing is that Ukraine is in the news, and all the politicians are kind of talking about it, and the newspapers are talking about it. So it is in the news, therefore it is on the front of our mind. But I totally agree with you that we have to also focus on tremendous other problems in the world of many kinds. One can list them easily. So we have to remember them and do what we can. And we mustn't lose that perspective and that broad picture, big picture. But of course, newspapers are all full of Ukraine, and the radio and the television and all the politicians are talking about Ukraine. And therefore, it is in the front of our mind. And therefore, we are talking about it. But we mustn't ignore all other problems. And people in other countries like in Africa or India or South America, they are not so much obsessed with Ukraine. They are getting on with protect the rainforest, and destruction of rainforest should be stopped, and the protection of indigenous cultures. In Australia, the Aboriginal people are fighting to stop the destruction of indigenous cultures and Aboriginal cultures, and those are very important things. And also promoting permaculture, agroecology, good farming, because our agriculture is creating 30 to 40% of greenhouse gases, and therefore we have to change that. So all those issues are not gone because of Ukraine, and therefore, and Ukraine is actually causing more problems like global warming, all the use of petroleum to run all these aeroplanes and the tanks and all the kind of weapons. They produce pollution and greenhouse gases. So war is not good for the environment. And so that way we have to keep that in mind and do other things as well. But also we have to remember there have been good things happen in the world in the past. Berlin Wall came down, the apartheid came to an end in South Africa, the imperialism, colonialism came to an end, racism is in retreat, and Obama became president in the White House. Many, many good things have happened. Women's place is better now than 50 years ago. When I was reading Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Second Sex, at that time, the place of women was very bad in comparison to today. So we have come a long way, even though we have a long way to go. Still a long way to go, of course, but we mustn't not celebrate what we have achieved. And so when we look at that, that gives us hope that we can go on creating, so that we can create new revolution and new consciousness and new awareness.
Satish, my final question is totally to this point. You mentioned that on your pilgrimage for peace, you met Martin Luther King Jr., who famously said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Do you believe that this is true?
Yes, it is true. And the thing is that Martin Luther King I would say that was the highlight of my 8,000-mile journey to
I'm
meet
s-
him. He was an embodiment of love and compassion and yet radicalism. He was
really.
a very revolutionary thinker and activist. He went 29 times jail. He was imprisoned 29 times, Alice. Can you imagine? And yet he never gave up until
Yeah.
the last breath of his life. So he was a great inspiration. I was so bowled over in his presence and his aura and his kind of charisma and his radicalism and yet so much love.
You
That
could
combination of the
feel
two
it.
was amazing.
Could you feel it? Was it palpable in his presence?
Yes, I could feel that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I could
Yeah.
feel his charisma and his radicalism and his love at the same time.
Mm.
And he was very humble too. He was all the time so praising me and saying, "What an achievement you have done, walking 8,000 miles. Tell me more. Tell me all the stories." So he was very humble. So I was very, very impressed and very inspired.
Mm, mm.